jewishculture.
One of the many ways that chassidus expresses itself is in simcha. The Rebbe would inspire the Elam by farbrengen and Yom Tov. Purim Tov Lamed Aleph was the first time that the Rebbe indicated by farbrengen that you should whistle. The Rebbe put both his fingers in his mouth and indicated that you should begin whistling, which was, of course, a major chiddush, because whistling was not something that was ever done till that point, definitely not by the Rabbein. After that, sporadically, different moments, different farbrengens where the Rebbe would do the same indication. Clearly, the Rebbe was opening up a new sinner of simcha. In Tov Lamed Vav, the Shchedesh Cheshvan, the Rebbe made a special tzeichem l'shalom farbrengen, essentially sending off the guests back to wherever they came from Eretz Yisrael, from other countries in the world. And during that farbrengen, the Rebbe indicated that they should whistle. My father, who's the publisher and editor of the Allgemeine Journal, had his photographer there. He took a picture of the Rebbe whistling. So my father, the next week's newspaper, went and printed a picture of the Rebbe whistling. The Allgemeine came out on Wednesday. We'd always go straight to the Rebbe. The Rebbe would always get the first Allgemeine. But I remember Friday night, my father goes to shul. I was in shul, 770. As soon as he walks into the door, he's attacked. What's but daylight to print a picture like that of the Rebbe whistling? A whistle was seen as not as a positive thing. That week, he gets a letter to the editor, signed by a chassid. He's protesting that the Allgemeine printed such a picture of the Rebbe in the newspaper. Time passes. I put in Lamed Vav that same year. Put him. To the surprise of everybody, middle of the farbrengen, one of the sichas begins.
Wir waren am meisten mit den Pfeifen. Wir pfeift allein und geheißen andere Pfeifen. Wo sie dort der Linie von Pfeifen, so hat am Mokel in Tanach, a befehlischer Posik in Tanach, a befehlische Sugi in Gemorre, a Psag Dine Rambam. Bischof redet sich wegen einer Mitzvah, wegen einer Simcha von Mitzvah. Sagt der Rambam am Punkt, als wie David am Melech ist nicht stamm gewesen mit Fases und Mecharkel, nur mit Fases und Mecharkel, Becholei, und gewesen Lovo Shevet Bad, und gewesen am Melech, und man gewusst, geguckt von den Fenstern, wie wird sich fühlen, Und Bishas Motem gesagt, hat nie gesagt, hat nicht gefeiert. Gesagt, befehligt, wie jemand Mika Weder. In der Ruf darf bestehen, a Covid von a frommen Iden.
When I went to see the Rebbe goes like this to me. I look at him, asks me to whistle. And I go, psst, little whistle. And he says, like this.
Meir Abisara became the designated hitter, so to speak. He was the whistler.
It was extraordinary. The whistling changed 770 completely.
Bishas do a initial simcha. Und sie da hoffen, als Mitzel wird Nigel wird, in ein Mitzwe von Yitzwe Hora, was Yitzwe Tokfe ist ein Mitzwe zu pfeifen auf das Sofe, auf das Flechschweke, auf 100-Schweke, als sie da am Maxog und sie da hin, was durch a Pfeif stellt man an mir bei mir nach Kotze. Und was man gesehen, dämmelt dann pfeifen. Als sie gewähnt liegen, was man mit gedacht haben, was gucken, was man sehen, was man hat gesehen auf dem Pony, als man kann oder habe, wenn sie mäßig seine Chais nicht. Diese Nachien von Mitzwe Meister mit 1 Mitzwe, 2 Mitzwe, 3 Mitzwe und dann noch ein Mitzwe, gerade Mitzwe bekommen. Und das soll bekommen, Mamschich sein, dem Kiem Aliu, von bei jedem Ahu Yitzlik an der Rebestelle, wird machen sein Feind, wo wir zusammenkleiden, alle Jiden mit Kolkatz mit dem, die Neuen Jid wird nicht bleiben in Gold, und wir zu bringen, käme mir, la Zena Agdesho, und der Chesed, und der Achmim, und der Korem Mamre.
This production is made possible through the generosity of the members of the GEM Foundation.
So the Shleisha Dvorim Ha'olam Kayim, Teira Vedo Gnilas Chassodim, but das doch sei Elam Kipshute, und sei Elam Kotten Zeh Odom, dürfen sie alle drei sein, Dabke Besimcha, und Besever Ponim Yofeis, wer bringt dort die Reis von Psukim, und Mamore Chazal, und dem Deck von Nivda Savaye Besimcha, was bin Frad Geiser das ab Tfilo, Ezo Avedische Belev, so Tfilo, so aber Echet Kela, de Kloles von Nivreise de Shamish, es keine der Linie von Nivda Havaye, Shimos Fuchemushe, Bekene, soll das sein Besimcha. Und wir bringen dort tegen Tarob an der Gele Teile, wo die Gmorde sagt in Broches und Shabbos. An der Linien von Limod der Teile darf sein, unlebendig mit Milse der Dichese. Als in der Hebton lernen darf ich mit der Simcha und bei mit der Atzrus, weil der selber an der Gele zu Zdokke, wie auch gepasst. Ich Shulchan Aruch von Rambam, als muss sein, Besever Ponim Yofeis, nicht Chas V'Sholem verkehrt und nicht maspi. Also sein nicht Azei und nicht Azei, nur wieder loschen in Shulchan Aruch, Dabke Besever Ponim Yofeis. Wo das ist echt bepashtes, als sich so kamo Ifani, was sie zu dienen dem Eibischten, so der Derech HaMelech, der Yivda Havai Besimcha. Bishas mis Meisif in Simcha, in der alle Gimel Kavim von Tera Vedor Milas Chasodim, was Tere Pasken, als sie darf sein, Kol Masechu, Bechol Drachecha, wird das sich in der Teil von Avedes Hashem, von Lashem Shamayim Vedoeru, darf doch das Eche sein in der Nähe von Simcho, und dermal bringt das beim sich Schleimus in Avedes Hashem, warum Simcho Peretz Gede, das ist mit Vakuum, Peretz, die Gdorim und der Agbolis, was sie kommt beim Sein, mit Adinionen von Seichel oder andere Geschwänis, bis mit Bechol, Wofchol, Bechol Nafschro, nur damit der Avedi in der Nähe von Bechol Meidecho, aber Bechol Mido, ist ewig der Kodesh Baruch in der Nähe von Wohafto mit Echavo, was hat demult, wer sagt in Seher, ki Gavna, wie mir sehe, wie das Shem besimcha, is hat demult, is menechet mehere das Spois, mir lamailo echet besimcha, als wird tegen von der Chassodim, Mustorim, wird das echet teil anide va anigle, Atev lonu tiftach, Atev in vananef, was mehere simcha. Und ich habe das bei ihm Peretz Gede, von seiner Hanukkah soll sein Lemeile mit die Wagbolle, worum ist wahrhaft es Weile Kecho, nicht Lechem Amenas Lekabel Schar wie Kayetzi Base, nur wie der Rambam bin Mevai Baruch in Ilchi Shuva Bisiyuma und in Peri Chassidische Behem, ist auch dermal bringt das Reches in der Schleimus, aber bald abem dort der alle Esser Keches Anefes Beschleimus, was wenn können sie sein Beschleimus, Bishase haben wir sich. Eiche de Minje von Meidecho, de Minje von Akifim Shebenef. Bishase ist aber ewig Adai Meyavo. Ist also demult rechnet sich nicht teis und messt nicht. Aber bald sind mir Nidos wie Kach, wird ton nicht mehr, dass heipech Hanukkah al pi Avo, heipech Hanukkah von Limut. Ateva lishmo, heipach Hanukkah von Avedes Hashem lishmo, mich mitech Avo amiti. Wo das ist demult, wenn der Esser Keches Anefesh stehen beschleimus, durch dem, wo sie seinen durchgenommen mit der Rotzen amiti und mit den Teilung amiti, was so demult der Seche da Wede mit der Keches Pnimin beschleimus. Und durch der Ruf, was steht, beschleimus in die alle Unionen, wo das ist verbunden, dafke, wenn das Lemeile mit Geder und Agbolo, durch den Ruf, was Shiro und Simcha, Peretz Geder, Kemutgosh, in dem Schir von der Quiz, von Asiri Bishvat, Bishono Su, und demulte das Mekarev, den Kim Hayil, wie sagt in Medrash, als sie dort Esser Schiris, was nein Schiris, was sich angeheben von Moshe Rabbeinu, aus Yosher Meshu, und danach, wer rechnet dort ist, die nein, seine noch Keden Abiul Aledei Mashiach. Danach ist ein der Shira Hasiris, mit den Minyan Hasiri, wenn es kommen Mashiach Zipkeno, Bigula Hamitis war Schleimer, und dort, wo das ist das Tolle der Maseno, Vavedoseno, durch der Simcha ins Man HaGolus, wird das Achone Massimo, so Simchas Elom al Rishon, der Shira Bezimra bis Man HaGolus, wird das Achone Massimo, so der Shira Hasiris.
With materials from the Living Archive, established by the Rohr Family Foundation. Video collection preserved by Benjamin Federman in tribute to his parents.
Good Vach, everybody. Before I share the story, I just wanted to dedicate this story to Hannah Berman's grandmother, who's recently passed away. Her name was Mimi Bas Reuven. Neshama should be in Gan Eden and be good intercedent on behalf of all her descendants and their families, B'seich Klal Yisrael, for all good begashmis of Ruchnius, and speedily be reunited with them at the coming of Mashiach. Also want to dedicate this tonight to all those in our community near for Shlema, especially to Baruch Hakem Mechan Rivka and Yafa Bas Jan Rivka and Bezalel Ben Peril, and to Mechol Ravid, Mechol Machlef Ben Miriam, Yafa Rivka Bas Janet, thank you. Yafa Rivka Bas Janet, Mechol Ben Miriam, Rafua Kreva Shlema. The story I want to share with you tonight is about a chassid of the Tzemach Tzedek and a chassid of Marash, whose name was Rabbi Chaim Yehoshua from Kalisk. In time in Tzemach Tzedek, there was a very appropriate this week's Torah portion. This week's Torah portion talks about, according to Arizal, the subject matter of the Torah portion, Mishpatim, is actually about Gilgul, about reincarnation. And all different stories, different halachas are connected to the concept of reincarnation and why things happen in different places, different times. So on that subject, the Mittler Rebbe describes an event that happened in his time that caused decades later, time of Tzemach Tzedek, is a story that I'm going to share with you tonight, the decree of Tsar Nikolai II, who said that Jewish boys from the age of 9 years old should be taken from their homes and be conscripted into the Tsar's army for 25 years. So the Mittler Rebbe and the Alter Rebbe and Tzemach Tzedek were all involved in trying to save these children, trying to rescue them. They were literally kidnapped from their homes and conscripted against their will in the army. And they had great sacrifice, first of all, to prevent them from being kidnapped and to redeem them. Those children were kidnapped, and also to strengthen the Jews who were in the Tsar's army. Tzemach Tzedek would visit them and encourage them. And we have letters in Tzemach Tzedek about the hero of tonight's story, Chaim Yehoshua of Kalisk, and his efforts to help this chassid who was very involved in helping these children. It's very apropos to today's time as well, because there are a lot of Jewish children who aren't born in a family that knows about the importance of Yiddishkeit, the importance of Judaism, and we could, although they're not being conscripted in the army, but they aren't really aware of who they are and how they're children of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and Sarif, Rachel, and Leah. And with a little effort, we can help them have a Jewish education and really, really help them. And we're going to learn tonight in this story what kind of incredible schus, incredible merit this is and what this does. So let's go to the story. Rabbi Chaim Yehoshua lived in a city called Gluchav, and he was visited by another chassid who was a shliach, an emissary of Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe Marash, to collect stock. This chassid's name was Dave Zev. Dave Zev from Ektunislav. Everyone loves Rosie. Rosie's our hero. Anyways, Dave Zev from Ektunislav, he visited the city. He would often visit the city of Gluchav, and there was an older chassid who would visit Rabbi Chaim Yehoshua. And when he came there one time, Rabbi Chaim Yehoshua, it was year Tafresh Lamed Vav, roughly about 150, 170 years ago. 150 years ago. Tafresh Lamed Vav, Yehuda, what year is Tafresh Lamed Vav? You'll tell me in a second. Tafresh Lamed Vav, he visited this chassid at that time. And because whenever he'd visit the city, he'd come to collect tzedakah and he'd come to share inspiration. This older chassid would also share stories with him. And this particular visit, Reb Chaim Yehoshua said that he feels his end is near. He was very sick. At that time he was 87 years old. And he asked that the chassidim of the town, the top chassidim, Rabbi Avram Zalman the Kohen, Rabbi Shimon Menachem the school teacher, Rabbi Chaim Fischel the school teacher, they should all come, and so this visiting guest should all come to him because he feels his time is near. And he was sick for about a week, but his mind was very clear until his last moments. And he's told different stories to his visitors, and he had a last request. What was his last request? He said that in the year Tov Kuf Tzaddik Gimel, Tov Kuf Tzamach Daled, he's not sure which year it was, he had visited the Tzemach Tzedek, and he was there for the entire Hanukkah. And throughout Hanukkah, Tzemach Tzedek shared 3 different Hasidic discourses, and the subject of the discourses was how the Greeks would ask the Jews, at the time of the story of Hanukkah, to write down on the horn of an ox, so you have to write down, in order to be accepted by the Greeks, you have to write down that you have no share in the God of Israel. And how the Greeks tried very hard to cause us to assimilate and to cast any connection with Hashem off, and to write down clearly they have no portion of the God of Israel. And the Tzemach Tzedek spoke about how the sacrifice of the Jewish people was what guaranteed victory for the Jewish people at that time. And Chaim Yehoshua was very affected by this, by his discourses. A year later, which means either Tov Kuf Tzaddik Hey or Tov Kuf Tzaddik Vav, it was one winter night. He was about 40 years old at the time, a little over 40. Who knows over 40, Rosie? Okay, good. So he's a little over 40, and he hears a knock on the door. He goes out of bed, and he opens the door, and there's 2 Jews who are wearing fur hats and dressed in the whole winter gear, and they're covered with snow. He gives them Shalom Aleichem, he greets them, and he asks them to take off their boots and to go next to the oven and warm up. And he gave them some hot water and some bread and some butter and some milk. And they're sitting to eat down, they're eating. And Rabbi Chaim Yehoshua said, so I went outside to the stable. And when I went out to the stable, I heard at the other end of the courtyard, I heard the sound of a child crying. But I didn't pay attention to it. I thought probably it's a sound of a cat or something. When I got closer to the place that the voice came from, I heard clearly there's a voice of a child. And I said, who's crying? And this boy said, I heard a trembling voice, and the boy said, I am Binyamin. And I got closer to where the voice was coming from, and I saw that their wagon was parked over there, and there was 2 children in the wagon, and they were tied up. One of them was sleeping, and one of them was crying. So this story is too scary for you, I think, right? Not scary? It's scary, right? And in those days, because of this decree of the Tsar Nikolai, how did they get these boys to join the army? There were chappers, or kidnappers, who would try to take kids away from their families. And he realized immediately that these people which are eating in his house, they had taken these kids and they kidnapped them. So he quickly untied them, and he brought these kids to his brother Michal's house. And his brother Michal woke up, and he told Michal, I think that these guys are chappers, these guys are kidnappers, and they're probably taking these kids to the Tsar's army. So I ran to my house, and when I got to my house, I ran back after I brought the kids safely to my brother's house. I went back to my house, and I saw one of the kidnappers is sitting down next to my son, Ephraim Zalman. And I woke up my family, and I told my family what I think, that these guys are kidnappers. And they tied up these kids. So the Jew who was sitting next to my son, Ephraim Zalman, says to me, I see you have a very good son, but I wasn't blessed with such good children. The one who sits in heaven gave me 2 sick children, they're not normal children, and I have to go bring them to the doctor in Vitebsk to heal them. He's an expert doctor there, and I had to tie them up, and that's what's going on in my life. My brother Michal, meanwhile, fed the children and safely locked them up in a room in his house, and he came to my house. When he saw these Jews there, he was so angry at them, and he greeted them with the words, "Welcome, kidnappers, and leave this house immediately. And if not, you'll have a bitter end." So these Jews didn't realize that their game was up, and they said, "Apparently we're not welcome here, we're going to go." And they went to their wagon, and they saw that the kids were gone. They came back to the house, and they started screaming, "Give us our children." But they saw that their cries weren't going to help, and they ran and they left. So about a month later, Michal, the brother of Chaim Yehoshua, visited Tzemach Tzedek, and he told Tzemach Tzedek what had happened. And that Tzemach Tzedek's face was shining with happiness because he saved these children, right, Rosie? He saved them. He's shining with happiness. And he gave a bracha to Michal and a bracha to his brother, Chaim Yehoshua, a bracha to all of them. And he said, "You guard these children for a year, and only after a year can you bring them back to their houses, because it wouldn't be safe." And they stayed and they learned with the school teacher, Rabbi Zev, and they were very successful in their learning. So Chaim Yehoshua, seeing all this and seeing what kind of impact this had made, he said he had a burning desire to continue to be involved in saving Jewish children. And he said, "I couldn't hold myself in. And I traveled to Tzemach Tzedek. I told Tzemach Tzedek, I really want to be involved in this work." So Tzemach Tzedek agreed. And he told me how to do this and what to do. And for 3 or 4 months a year, sometimes in the summertime, sometimes in the wintertime, I would travel to different places to save the children. And I was involved in this for 7 years until I was caught. How was he caught? What happened was, he went to this city called Kazan. And when he was in Kazan, he was involved in business there, and that was a pretext of why he was there, but he really was there trying to find children and to save them. He managed to save 8 children, but he needed to find a place to put them. And at that time, this guy who spoke Yiddish and was a Jewish guy, but apparently he was a spy for the government, and he befriended Rabbi Chaim Yehoshua, and he did business with him. And as they became friendly, he told this guy about his real reason why he's there, to save Jewish children. Oh, wow, what a noble thing. And Rabbi Chaim Yehoshua naively believed that this guy was also interested in helping him. And instead, the guy really betrayed him to the government. And he had these 8 children there. He was trying to find a place for them. And the day he was planning to leave, 3 soldiers, armed soldiers, came and they arrested him. Baruch Hashem, the children escaped, but they arrested him. They put him in jail. They took him from jail to jail until he arrived in the area of Vitebsk in jail, and he stayed in jail for several months. And there's a letter that Tzemach Tzedek asking to help this chassid. Tzemach Tzedek, it's a very short letter, but the chassid, Avram Arba of Person, who was related to this story, he was related to the story because it was his father-in-law's father who Tzemach Tzedek wrote this letter to, asking him to make an effort to try to get this chassid free, helping Chaim Yehoshua, who was in prison. So it's interesting, all the notes that this chassid wrote in this letter to Tzemach Tzedek. One of the things Tzemach Tzedek writes, "Do this for my sake, do this to help me." And apparently this chassid writes, Tzemach Tzedek writes, "Do this for my sake," because Tzemach Tzedek asked Rabbi Chaim Yehoshua to do this because this is what he wanted to do. He was doing this as his emissary, and therefore he says, "Do this for my sake." It's a very fascinating letter, but not for right now. But either way, the Tzemach Tzedek asked him to make an effort to get Rabbi Chaim Yehoshua out of prison. And they were successful because if you remember a few months ago, I shared the story of Gabriel Nesachain. Gabriel Nesachain, remember that story about the lady who rubbed okay. Anyways, Gabriel Nesachain, he was close to the governor of Vitebsk, and he managed to prevail upon him to free Reb Chaim Yehoshua on condition that he would leave the whole area of Vitebsk and no one should know about it. And that's what happened. So he was in prison for a couple of months, but it was very serious. It wasn't simple being in prison. It was life and death. But eventually he was freed, and he asked Tzemach Tzedek what to do. And Tzemach Tzedek told him he should move to Gluchav, and he lived in Gluchav for 25 years. He would visit Lubavitch. There is the first Tzemach Tzedek, and Tzemach Tzedek passed away. He visited Marash. Anyways, he came to Tzemach Tzedek after being involved in the 7 years of trying to free Jewish children, and Tzemach Tzedek said to him that in the merit of what he's doing, he promises him that he'll have a long life and that he will be imi b'mchitzasi. You know what that means, Rosie? That in the same place where Tzemach Tzedek is in Gan Eden, this chassid will be in the same place with him in Gan Eden. That's really special. The Rebbe's place in Gan Eden, that's where he'll be with him in Gan Eden. So the Chaim Yehoshua said, today or tomorrow, my neshama will return to its maker. My last request is that after they bury me, and a minion, 10 people should gather at my funeral, and they should say the following words. Rebbe, the son-in-law of the previous Rebbe, and the grandson of the Alter Rebbe, your servant Chaim Yehoshua ben Esther has passed away. And before he passed away, he made us shluchim mitzvah, he made us his emissaries for a mitzvah to notify the Rebbe that your servant Chaim Yehoshua ben Esther has passed away, and to remind the Rebbe his promise that he promised his servant Chaim Yehoshua ben Esther for his service in speaking Shurim and redeeming Jewish people from prison. He's promised him that he will be with him in the same place in Gan Eden. That's what Chaim Yehoshua requested from all those who were with him on that day. So this chassid who came back to Marash told the Marash that we all promised him. And the next morning, after he davened morning prayers, he put on the tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam, and with a clear mind, he said the pasuk Shema Yisrael, and he passed away. On that same day, Rabbi Chaim Yehoshua was taken to his burial, and we all announced what he had requested us to. And when this chassid said, when I came to Reb Marash, I told Marash this whole story, Reb Marash said, Asiya la'ela, that's a phrase from the Zohar, which means action is considered the highest thing. Through doing actual aveda, to actually doing things in this world, this brings you to the highest of levels. A smart chassid found and assured for himself a very good place, a beautiful place. My father is a trustworthy person, and certainly he will fulfill his request. In other words, certainly he will find a good place in Gan Eden together with the Tzemach Tzedek. That's a story. But I think the story is really, as I said before, very relevant to us. There's so many children that we could easily, especially now because all the public schools are still on Zoom, and parents are looking for things to do with their children. Baruch Hashem, in our shul, we have this program for kids who are in public school. They're able to come to us throughout the week and do their Zooms, and meanwhile, between the Zooms, to learn Torah. And it's really something that, could really know a child who is not going to a Jewish school, and they're doing Zoom, they can come to us throughout the week and learn Torah and learn Shema Yisrael and have a fun time. So it's a great thing to do and a great merit, and not just to get a good place in Gan Eden, but to get a good place when Mashiach will come speedily now, and to speed up the coming of Mashiach. And that's what the story I want to share tonight. Thank you all for listening. Any questions or comments? All right.
Yasher Koach.
Oh, is that Baruch Hakeim and Chana Rivka? Wow. Baruch Hakeim and Chana Rivka, I want to tell you that your iced tea, thank you very much. I learned a lot from the comments, the quote in the iced tea cap this week. Very, very brilliant stuff. Thank you for the iced tea. Baruch's birthday was just on Friday. Baruch Shavir of Bracha V'Atzlacha. But Gashmis of Ruchnius, the Leben, the Yar, Gesundheit and Freile Charei. Don't think about Gan Eden, Baruch. We need you here.
Amen, amen.
Gesundheit Woche, Freile Woche.
Amen.